Everyone, welcome. I'm Councilman Rory Lantzman, and this is our fourth town hall for the 24th Council District, focused on public safety issues during the coronavirus crisis. I'm very proud to represent the neighborhoods of Kew Gardens Hills, Pominock, Electchester, Fresh Meadows, Hillcrest, Jamaica Estates, Briarwood, Parkway Village, Jamaica Hills, and Jamaica. And that includes, for purposes of this town hall meeting, the 103rd Police Precinct, which is my district, basically south of Hillside Avenue, the south side of Hillside Avenue, and the 107th Police Precinct, which includes everything north of Hillside Avenue, basically Hillside Avenue to the Long Island Expressway, with the exception of the Cedar Grove neighborhood just across the street from John Bowne High School, which is technically part of the 109th precinct. Most people don't realize that, but it's true. As you all know, we are open for business. We are, of course, observing all of these shutdown and social distancing rules that are in place, but our district office, if you call us or email us or tweet at us or Facebook at us, I don't know if that's really a term, to Facebook at us, but if you reach out to us on Facebook, you will be able to get us. Sam, can you please put up the slide for people who want to be able to contact my office? There it is. Sam Goldsmith, by the way, my communications director, who is the maestro behind the scenes, coordinating and organizing this town hall. You can call us at 718-217-4969. You can email us at rlantzman@council.nyc.gov. You can tweet at us at Rory Lantzman, or you can send us a message via Facebook. I hope that everyone is receiving our daily COVID-19 email updates and seeing them on Facebook. If you are not, and you wish to sign up, and you really should, because there's lots of good information in those emails, check out my Facebook page or send us an email at cd24sam@gmail.com, as in Council District 24, sam@gmail.com, or you can send it to the rlantzman@council.nyc.gov. My Facebook page and my City Council website have archives of our previous town halls, and they were all very, very interesting. We had town halls on health, obviously, on seniors, on domestic violence, and we had a general town hall where everyone got a chance to meet my staff and my team and ask your questions. And we are committed to holding regular town halls throughout the duration of the COVID-19 crisis. In case you're wondering, no, I am not really outside of One Police Plaza. That is just my virtual background on Zoom. So today's topic is public safety, and we're very, very happy to have with us the commanding officers of the two main precincts in my district, who I'll introduce in a moment. Looking at the big picture in New York City, crime is way down. As you might expect, while all of us are locked in our homes, not on the subways, not on the streets, our economy is pretty much frozen. Comparing the April 2020 statistics to last year's April 2019 statistics, the numbers are pretty striking. Citywide, serious crimes are down 29%. Lesser crimes are down 61%. Both the 107th precinct and the 103rd precinct have experienced their own drops in crime for the month of April. Each precinct is very different in terms of its jurisdiction and the kinds of activity that it sees, and our commanding officers will explain that a little bit. But, you know, obviously I like to say there are no silver linings in this pandemic, because it's killing tens of thousands of people. But as you would expect, crime is down. The other side of that, at least as it relates to police department, is the serious impact that COVID-19 is having on the police force, both the uniformed members as well as the civilian staff. As of Monday, the NYPD had released information that over 4,600 of its employees, including uniform and non-uniform, have returned to work fully after having recovered from a positive test for the coronavirus, and 450 uniform members and 129 civilian members are still out sick, diagnosed with COVID-19. And of course, numerous members of the department, both uniform and civilian, have lost their lives to the disease, and that is just a terrible tragedy. So, joining us is the commanding officer of the 103rd Precinct, Deputy Inspector Vincent Tavalaro, and joining us from is the commanding officer of the 107th Precinct, Deputy Inspector Scott Henry. And I'm going to introduce them in a moment to be able to introduce themselves and talk about what they're seeing. But let everyone on the town hall know, if you have a question, there is a Q&A function in your Zoom control panel, and you can hit the Q&A, and Sam or one of the moderators will reply. And when the time comes, you can ask your question live. Please note, we've had this in previous Zooms. If you are on anonymously, and you're welcome to join us anonymously if you want, but you cannot ask a question anonymously on Zoom. So if you want to ask a live question, type in your name and we will get to you. If you don't, you can ask your question in the Q&A section, and we can try to get to you as well. But if you're anonymous, it won't be live. If you are calling in, then you can still ask a question, but you're going to have to email it to Sam. And so you can email your question. If you're calling in, email your question to cd24sam, as in Council District 24, Sam, @gmail.com, or you can text Sam to 347-498-4826. That's 347-498-4826. So with that, let me give a warm welcome to both of our commanding officers, and I thank you for taking the time out of your extraordinarily busy days. And we'll start with the commanding officer of the 103rd Police Precinct, Deputy Inspector Vincent Tavalaro. Inspector, welcome.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Hope everyone is doing well. It's been a while since I've actually been able to participate in a community-based meeting. So I appreciate the time, just to be on here, to speak it out. Just from a standpoint of personnel, as it relates to coronavirus here in the 103rd Precinct, as a whole, I'm lucky to say that we've actually managed pretty well. As far as those who contracted, went out sick, thank God. We had nobody really seriously ill. It was just your typical run-of-the-mill fever type symptoms. So we're almost back up and running as far as personnel goes at full strength, with the exception of like our normal, whether it be injuries or sick. So we're not too far off from our baseline numbers as far as officers out. So with that being said, I'll just transition to some of the crime that we've seen, and we have seen a decrease, like the councilman said, during the pandemic, largely attributed to the fact that there's just not as many people being out, and people in essence being victims. So before the pandemic, we really struggled the first quarter of the year, a little bit before that, just with robberies. Really the theme for the year were robberies here in the 103rd Precinct. But when you have less people out there, you have less victims. So we were actually, saw a significant drop over the course of the last now going on 2 months. So there, we have seen an uptick with some property related stuff. Historically here in the 103rd, our burglaries tend to stem from construction sites and construction type vehicles, whether they're commercial or privately owned, parked on the street, usually on a desolate type area, sometimes around the train station, where we continue to get those type of car breaks, where they're tools or property or construction type property being stolen. As far as violence goes, we're up for the year. We have 7 shooting incidents for the year compared to 2 last year. The good thing, if you really dig deep down into our 7 shooting incidents, there's very, very, very little connection to each other, meaning that there's a very small chance for retaliation, which is always something that we look for as a precursor for future violence. And there is also a lot of these incidents are standalone from the mere fact that they don't really stem from the 103rd precinct, the Jamaica area themselves, meaning the victim or the person of interest or the person arrested were just not from the Jamaica area. So it's good from the standpoint that again, it goes back to retaliation, and it just diminishes the chance for that. As a whole, the city and the borough has been up in grand larcenies from auto. So I'll take a moment here just to get the message out. We're going to have the message, the NYPD digital message board. I just spoke to the borough. It's going to be positioned on Hillside Avenue, so it'll pretty much encompass us, the 107, and the traffic from along Hillside, which incorporates the 3 precincts, the 107, the 103, and the 105. Just as like a visual reminder to the keys in the ignition, with the key fob, whether the key is physically in the ignition or if it's just the key fob left in the car. We're only up 10 GLAs for the year, which equates to it's about 30% for the first quarter, and so which is comparatively low versus some of the other Queens South commands that are really high with the grand larceny autos. So it's just important to remember, like if you're running in, and even if you're running into the the ATM on the curbside ATM, it's just not a good idea, because the predators, the people are out there, they're looking for it. They see it, and if you're 10 feet away from the car with it running, that's enough, and they'll take off with it. So we're ramping things up. We're starting to get to the nicer weather, so we're expecting it to get busier. We'll see what the summer brings with the new regulations and how long that's gonna take to get back to normal protocol. But that's really it in a nutshell for the 103rd precinct.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And now, Inspector Henry. While we're waiting to get Inspector Henry, people have been asking our frequently asked our Q&A, people bombarding it. They want to know what is today's smoothie, and I'm sorry to say that today I had to run out of the house and I did not get a smoothie today. So it's just a tea in a paper cup, but it's refreshing.
You got me?
There he is.
All right, it's working.
Inspector Henry.
Okay, hold on a second. Now I lost you. Okay, I got you.
All right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I thought I had it all set up. Thank you very much for hosting this. As Inspector Tavallaro said, it's nice to get back and get a little bit of a feel for what the community is feeling. So first I'll go, thank you to everyone in the community, the people reaching out with concern for my officers and myself and my family and everybody. Thank you very much. We were struggling at one point where we had about 25% of the command was out sick with different ailments, predominantly COVID. We had a bunch of them tested positive for COVID and a bunch tested negative, which I don't believe is accurate. Partners in the same call, one is sick, tested positive, the other one has the same symptoms and tested negative. I think that's an inaccurate test. But by now, they're pretty much all back to work. I only got a few people out sick, which is only slightly higher than my normal average for a day of my officers being out sick. We'll go into crime. So crime, we're doing very well. COVID is one side benefit is there's not a lot of people getting victimized out there. We are down in every area for the 28-day except grand larceny auto. And it just as Inspector Tavallaro pointed out, this is just people leaving their cars running. And several people, we've had their car stolen with a key fob in the car, which is kind of comical. I find people, they hide the key fob in their car, thinking they have to find the key fob. Someone gets in, they press start, and they drive your whole car away. So they're not really trying to steal your key. So if anybody that's hearing me right now if you have a email list of community members, two things I would ask you to blast out to them, which would help tremendously. First, don't leave your car running at any point. Secondly, lock your doors and don't leave valuables in your car. We had it would astound you what people leave in their car. I had one person who lost a $275,000 diamond ring that was left in his car. Multiple Rolexes have been left in the car. And for a lot of these cars, particularly the higher end cars, so like the Range Rover, which seems to be targeted. The reason the Range Rover is targeted is because if the Range Rover is locked, the mirrors fold in. So if you're driving past a Range Rover, you could tell whether or not it's locked by just looking at the mirrors. We had one Range Rover vehicle stolen with the keys in the ignition. And just to illustrate how community involvement helps us is this vehicle was stolen and a community member who had my phone number texted me, hey, a guy on my block had his car stolen and he has a tracking device on it and it's now pinging in 3rd Avenue, 676 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn. I happened to be on my way in from work. I was on the Verrazano Bridge and I know exactly where the location is. It's right by where I grew up. So I shot right to the location. We were able to recover the person's vehicle, a $100,000 Range Rover that was recovered 3 blocks from a shipping piers where shipping containers are loaded. So my belief is this was probably going to be sent overseas, which is very common in high-end cars. They're stolen and sent overseas to Africa and to the Middle East. So it just illustrates how much value the community brings in giving us information and helping us recover some stolen property. That said, Vinny Tavallaro pretty much said everything that needs to be said as far as locking your cars and don't leave the cars running. We're going to be pushing a borough-wide initiative to try to remind people of the importance of this. But I'll just open it up for questions if the councilman wants to do that.
Terrific. Thank you very much. That's exactly what we want to do. And I wanted to show people, I don't know if everyone knows, first of all, this thing called CompStat, which I know you and the police department are intimately familiar with, and elected officials, a lot of community leaders are familiar with it. But I want to make sure everybody on the call, on the Zoom, knows that anybody can go online, the NYPD website, and get the stats for the city, Queens, their precinct, week by week, month by month, year by year. It really is remarkable. And now there's something called CompStat 2.0, where you can zero in on your neighborhood. So Sam pulled up there's a picture, a slide of the CompStat report citywide. And I don't know if you can see there, Sam, it's a little small. I don't know if we can make it bigger, but what we've highlighted there is the last 28 days, which is for all practical purposes, let's say the month of April. There we go. That's good. And you can see, now this is citywide, you can see the remarkable reduction in crime during the month of April this year compared to last year, which, as you would expect as a result of the coronavirus. A total 29% decrease in serious crimes. And when you do the math there, it's an even greater increase in less serious crimes. All that data is available to the public, and people who care about what's going on in their community, in their city, should take a look at it. Okay, I'm going to do the first question because I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and we have a number of people who are asking this through the Zoom. Inspector Henry, what can you tell us, if anything, about the video that we all saw of a guy, a homeowner, catching some guy who looked like he was breaking into his house, but what can you tell us about it? Because you can imagine a lot of people talking about that incident.
Yeah. I've gotten probably 30 phone calls in the last couple of days, texts, thank you. People mostly calling to thank me for the quick response of my officers. If you watch the video, they're literally on the scene in seconds. So there's more behind the scenes that led to that. So what happens is, again, the community support in the 107 is unmatched. It's incredible. We have a person in the community sees 3 people acting suspiciously walking up the block looking into cars. They call 911. We respond, and we can't find the person that they called about. We contact the person that called 911. He says, I can't identify him, but they were looking into cars. As we're there looking for these people, we're driving around in the canvas looking for them. A second call comes over of a male trying to break into a car. So being that we're right there, we go right around the corner, and what I believe happened is the person saw us coming and they run into an alleyway. In any event, as my cops drive past the alleyway, they spot the people inside the common driveway. They go into the driveway. The 3 guys that were breaking into the cars start jumping over fences. As they get into one backyard, the homeowner sees them he hears them and sees them on his camera. He comes out and challenges them with the firearm. So here's the scary part. There's 3 guys. He chases 2, and then the other guy comes from behind him. What I believe happened, they were trying to hide in his backyard, which is very common when we're chasing people. They find a shed, they find under a deck, they try to hide. But he chases the first 2 guys out. They jump over the fence and they flee. He turns around, and now the second guy comes out. He points his firearm at him, puts him on the floor, and literally within seconds, my first car pulls up in front of the location. He very alertly waves down my police officers. They order him to put his gun down. He puts it down, walks up to the stairs, and they place the other guy under arrest. The other units canvassing, they locate the 2 guys that flee, and they were the guys in the backyard of the car. So we were able to arrest all 3 of them. One had only 1 arrest in his past. The other 2 had pretty extensive criminal histories, mostly regarding low-level crimes like breaking into cars, which is exactly what they were doing on this one. But again, it illustrates the involvement of the community and the help that we get every single day. Calling in a suspicious person, secondary person calling in a person trying to get into a car, and then the person that finds people in his backyard. So thank you very much to the community. We were able to make the arrest. And if nobody calls, we might get 10, 12 cars broken into that night. So thank you very much.
So I had the opportunity to speak to the homeowner after the incident happened. And
He just left my office.
He just left your office.
He came in to say thank you for the quick response.
See, that's nice. Well, people should thank you for the work
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And what I was going to say is, he remarked at how professional and courteous your officers were when they showed up. And you saw from the video how they handled themselves. And we really appreciate that very much. The next question comes from Zena Zimmerman. She's from Briarwood. And her question relates to social distancing in the parks, et cetera. You know, I have, obviously the biggest park that I have in my district is in the 107th would be the Flushing Meadows Park, south of the Long Island Expressway. So Willow Lake, Meadow Lake, that whole thing is my council district. And in the 103rd, I have Rufus King Park, and these are parks where ordinarily on a nice day, they'd be really, really busy. So Zena, why don't you ask your question and we'll get their responses.
Okay, can you hear me?
Big, strong voice. I know you can speak really loud. I've experienced it.
Hi, Rory. First of all, Rory, thank you for your daily updates. They're fabulous. And thank you also for the blood testing last week at your college. That was great, though we didn't get our results. But that's another story. So, gentlemen, your police, I can only applaud you and thank you for everything you've done and putting your lives on the line to protect and care for us during this COVID crisis. So now going forward, I was twice this weekend in Flushing Meadow Park. It was packed. There was a huge police presence on horses, on bikes, in cars, but I did not really see very much interaction between the officers and the crowds, and there was a lot of soccer playing, hockey playing, and a lot of people with no masks, especially bike riders. You know, I'm autoimmune. I went for some fresh air, and I'm not going to go back because I didn't feel comfortable there. I'm afraid that when my local playground opens, it's going to be worse. And I already been accosted, not accosted, but I asked people to put masks on and they were very nasty back to me. So I'd like to know how we're going to handle this, especially once the playgrounds open, if they open.
All right, I'll take.
Sorry, Inspector Henry, thank you. Let me just say, he did correct me, or technically, the Flushing Meadow Park, that part of Flushing Meadow is, I think it's divided up, whereas south of Jewel, which is Willow Lake, is the 112th. I think between Jewel and the Long Island Expressway is actually the 104th or the 110th, the one that's in Corona.
102, I think.
Oh. But in any
But
event.
I can take the general question if you don't mind.
Yeah, and then I want to hear from Inspector Tavalaro because he's got, like I said, Rufus King and other parks in
So I mean, I got Cunningham Park, which is huge.
Yeah.
But so we spent, I spent my whole weekend in Cunningham Park. That's not in your council district, is it?
No, just outside of it.
Okay, so what we're doing is that the police department has started now. They're going to start utilizing school safety agents to expand to patrol those areas, just to have that extra presence of reminder. I was in Cunningham Park all weekend. Social distancing was being practiced by pretty much everybody. We did have people posted. I had my officers posted at every entry into the park just to remind people that there was no barbecuing. The Parks Department has closed all barbecue areas. So that, I think, it solved a lot of the problems in Cunningham Park, because once people start barbecuing, they have coolers. We don't really regulate everything they're drinking. So, you know, maybe they're drinking things they shouldn't be drinking in a public area. And, you know, as the day goes on, people become a little bit more resistant to us trying to enforce social distancing. But I was out there all day, both Saturday and Sunday, and there was a lot of people in the park. But generally, everybody was social distancing. We had officers handing out masks, so it eased that. I saw only one person give any resistance to putting on a mask, and he actually had a mask, but he didn't want to wear it. And when we kind of told him he's supposed to wear it, he put it on grudgingly and walked away. But yeah, we did see, I was out there before we started. I went down on Friday evening, and as I was approaching, several community members came up and kind of put the same spin on things that you did, that there's people not wearing masks. And when we went inside, they actually were not wearing masks. But for us, as we had them coming into the park, we were reminding them to wear masks, and we actually had people handing out masks. So I think going forward, the police department as a whole, that's going to be a goal, is to actually supply people with it so they can't have the, oh, I forgot it at home, which some people do, and some people may just be resistant. But on the whole, we're going to try to have people out there giving out masks when we can, and just people at the entries and exits of the park, just reminding people to socially distant, keep socially distant, and also wear the masks.
Inspector Tavalara, what are you seeing in the 103rd in terms of the parks? And then more broadly, just trying to get people to comply. You know, we saw some difficult, leave it at that, some difficult interactions between the police and some people in the community over issues relating to social distancing, et cetera. I do not envy your officers having to try to enforce these rules. So Inspector, what are you seeing in the 103rd parks and otherwise?
Look, this weekend was beautiful. So Rufus King was really primarily the hotspot, and that's where we dedicated our most resources. And just like Inspector Henry said from the 107, you know, it's hard for us. We're the mediators in this. If they had just, you know, went out about and said, basically, look, we're going to close the parks completely. You're not allowed in there. It would make our lives a little bit easier, but that wasn't the case. So we became kind of like the middlemen. So really what we made our effort in doing was providing those who really didn't have the masks. Even if it was, guys who, they had like a makeshift game of soccer where five or so guys were kicking the ball to each other. You know, we provided some masks to those individuals. But you also have to account for, you know, we're not going up to each small pocket of groups. And I didn't see any large, overwhelming to the point where it was like 20, 30, 40 people, you know, huddled around the barbecue like it was a family reunion. It was really smaller pockets. And then it would come down to, you still have the exception if you live under the same household with, you know, leaving the groups to less than 10, you know, that would be somewhat acceptable. So it really was it was a big, you know, undertaking for my staff and everybody that partook in, especially over this weekend with the beautiful weather. So I think I would consider it successful with the challenge at hand. And thankfully, you know, we weren't on the news with an overwhelming, you know, party that you know, got out of hand. That was the goal. Like, we wanted to nip it early so it didn't get to the point where it really got overblown. I think we had one soccer tournament in Liberty down at 170 in Liberty, 172 in Liberty. And they had about 40 or so members. And we basically told them, like, look, you're going to have to either break it up to smaller groups. And they decided to actually leave. So that was, I think that was, you know, it was a challenge. It really was, being the mediator of this.
Yeah, it's tough. Over the weekend, so in my household, it's me, my wife, and our two college-age daughters. My son, who just graduated from college, he's got an apartment in the city, and he ain't leaving it. But it was a beautiful weekend. So the four of us, wife and two daughters, we went upstate. We drove about an hour to a state park that was open and has lots of nice hiking trails. And, you know, there were a lot of people there, nothing that you would describe as crowded, but there were a lot of people there. And I could see where if someone took a picture from a distance, it would look like, hey, all these people are out and they're not social distancing and they're violating the guidelines. But overwhelmingly, you know, our family of four stuck together. When we were on the trails, we made space for people to pass. When we were in the picnic area, we were at our table, and, you know, we were 10, 15, 20 feet away from the nearest people. You know, people can go out, and they've just got to be responsible. And please be responsive to the police officers if they're asking you to comply with something. And obviously, you know, we want everybody in government to be respectful of community folks. It's a difficult situation for everybody. Yes.
That's a good point. When I was checking on, I had lunch, and when I came back, as I'm pulling up 193rd Street, I look into the park, and I'm like, what happened? but it was exactly like you said, from a distance, when you look, you can't tell how close people are. And as I got into the park, everybody was spaced equally. So that's a good point that you made.
Yeah, okay. All right. So our next question is from Neeta Jain. Sam, you want to queue up Neeta?
Hello.
Hi, Neeta. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. All
Good.
right. Thank you so much for doing this fourth time for our community and for our CD24. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh,
Please
because I
try to speak up a little louder, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay, no problem. First of all, I want to say thank you to you for doing this community meetings on Zoom. And my second thank you and appreciation goes to Inspector Henry and Inspector Wilson for doing a wonderful job keeping our community safe. But at this point, I have got so many calls from our community members who has really shown a concern about a crime rate after we open. They're all very scared. They are saying that a lot of people are out of job, a lot of people lost resources of their income for so many different reasons. So the crime rate is going to be up once we open. So are we prepared for that kind of thing? And what do you think about it, Inspector?
Yeah, I mean, we always anticipate what the possible crimes could be. My personal concern is we may see a spike in burglaries as we open up due to businesses that have been closed for weeks. Now, they go back to their place of business and somebody had broken in the time they weren't there. To combat this, what we got in our commercial areas, we got cars doing specific directed patrols, particularly at night, to see if we're seeing cars parked in the area that look suspicious. But we're ready to fight crime any way it comes. We've got a long track record of doing this. We track crime, at the precinct level, we track it hourly. As crimes are coming in, I'm made aware. So as we see hot spots, we deploy our resources there. And yeah, I mean, I understand the concern. There's been no indicator of that right now. In all indications, the crime is going down. But anything that happens, we're ready to handle. I mean, we got, dedicated people. As you see in the 107, we have tremendous community support from every area of the command. We got homeowners associations that are recommending all of their homeowners put cameras in to be able to help the police department should a crime occur in that area. So, yeah, we're ready to handle whatever comes up. We always are ready for crime to start to spike, which you'll always see a group or a person start to break into cars, try to rob people. And what we do is we shift our resources to where they're needed. And we're ready to handle whatever comes up. But, the key to it is community involvement. So once in a while, I'll get a video. All these guys were trying to break into cars the other day. And I look at it, the video's 3 weeks old when it's dated. If we get the information timely, that's how we deploy our resources. So some people overlook. A guy stole a package, but it was only a $25 cutting board, which I had the other day. Don't overlook it. Report it. So I respond by where the crimes are occurring. If you don't report it, I may not know that they're occurring. So encourage the people to make the report. Let us know where crime is occurring. Like stuff like this, coming to the community meetings and let us know what's going on outside that we may not be aware of, and we'll address it accordingly.
That's true. So I'm going to post all your advisory on my Facebook. As you know, I'm also a district leader and 107 is in my district.
Please tell people to stop leaving their cars running and lock their doors, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that
by 20% if they do that.
Lock your door. Don't leave your car running. Don't leave anything valuable in your cars. Anything else you want to post?
That's good. That'll be good for me.
And I want to request all the community members, please do respect and follow our police officers' instructions, because these are for our safety, for our health, not for only them. So keep distancing, wash your hands, and please wear mask. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for your time and service once again.
Thank you, Neeta. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me remind everybody, if you want to ask a question, if you're on Zoom, there is a Q&A function. We need you to type your question in if you want us to put you in the queue. If you want to be able to ask your question live, you cannot be on the call anonymously. If not, I might get an opportunity to ask your question for you, but if you want to ask the question, you've got to be on the Zoom with your name. If you are not on the Zoom and if you've just phoned in, you can ask your question by emailing cd24sam@gmail.com, or you can text Sam at Sam's number, which I'm pulling up and will tell you what that number is any moment. 347-498-4826. Boy, Sam is quick. So let me just ask Inspector Tavalaro, what, I don't know how to put this, like, what are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for, being concerned about, making sure you're keeping an eye on, however you want to put it, when we start, I'm knocking the wood of my desk here, when we start coming out of the lockdown, as it were? What do you think people, especially, so I'm thinking especially like my area, the downtown Jamaica area, around Rufus King Park, around Sutphin and Jamaica Avenue, around the railroad. What are you looking at?
Well, you know, like the inspector said, Inspector Henry said from the 107, like, you know, obviously that incorporates a large portion of the business, you know, the business district. And we do have stores that were closed for an extended period of time. And they may or may not have been checked up upon, you know, or during the course of the lockdown. So with that being said, I'm sure we will see an influx in commercial burglaries. We have a couple of active patterns currently now, but like I referenced earlier in the call or in the conference, that primarily they stem from construction sites or construction vehicles. But I anticipate that we will see an uptick in you know, in these burglaries. We've had the 103rd and a couple of other Queen South commands have been allotted some additional resources during the pandemic. So we were able to get some ancillary units, which just for an example, like the Narcotics Bureau. They were kind of suspended they suspended their normal operations and were given to us as support on the patrol end. So we've utilized these additional resources to continue directed patrols in the business type areas on the overnight. So as a visual, as an added deterrent, you know, and we've put some onus and scrutinized the alarm systems. If the alarm call comes over through the 911 system, it's kind of moved towards a priority with the anticipation that we will see an uptick in commercial burglaries. So we are almost treating the 1011, the alarm call through the 911 system, as an actual burglary in progress. And then look, once people clear to come out and we get back into the normal, hopefully that's in the beginning of the summer, at some point in the summer, we experience, you have better weather, there's more people out. So we also anticipate that usually brings an uptick with crime, and unfortunately sometimes an uptick in violence. And we get a lot of support. Look, we'll be ready for it. We've been allotted a decent amount of overtime from downtown during this pandemic, and I would assume that'll continue to flood in. We've utilized that as some foot patrol up along the Jamaica corridor, where that's been requested in the past. So this weekend, all weekend, even though the weather is not slated to be that great. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to have foot posts along Jamaica, Parsons, and in Rufus King Park.
Terrific, terrific. Okay, our next question comes from Manjur, who is from the Jamaica Muslim Center in Jamaica Hills. Sam, can you bring Manjur in?
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And Lori, thank you very much updating us every day so we know what's going on around us. And 107, especially our commanding officer, Henry, thank you very much. He called us many times, want to know how we're doing. And thank you again, him and all NYPD members for their service. And we had just a little concern, as you mentioned, these days, you know, the economical situation, people are out of jobs. So we notice the people are walking around GMC area and other neighborhoods, and sometimes they are suspicious. And there is a small incident happened maybe 2 weeks ago by Highland and Homeland area is, you know, NYPD knows, 107 knows. So just wondering if it's possible to, I know we have a shortage of people, if it's possible to increase little police patrol this neighborhood so people will feel safe when they come out. And once again, you know, thank you very much, each and everyone, for your leadership. Lori is in the city and our NYPD members. And thank you again, JMC and community is grateful to your service. Thank you.
Bonjour, thank you very much, pal. Always a pleasure to hear your voice. So, yeah, you know, the manpower issue was never really less patrols. So while we did have less manpower, we have specialized units that we kind of shifted to a regular tour. We took some people that normally work inside and do some analysis type of work. We shifted them to patrol. So we never really had a lapse in the number of people we had out on patrol. We moved our anti-crime teams into uniform and we put them in line with a normal tour. Usually they do different hours. So we never really lost patrol force, meaning the number of people that were outside responding to radio runs and stuff like that. What we are seeing is a shift in our requests, our service requests. So our 311 jobs are up significantly, and that's being driven predominantly by social distancing. A lot of calls getting made. You know, this particular business is not social distancing and stuff like that. But I could definitely shift more people, get them directed. You know, JMC is one of my hot spots. I'm always sending people by. Even though you guys are closed, you may not realize it. We're still there. The other day I went out, I rode out myself just to make sure when I drove past in front of JMC, there was a car stopped, just standing there. What we asked them to do under normal circumstances. I went into Captain Tilly Park. There were 2 cars in the park. So we are getting out there. There are a lot of people there, but the suspicious people you cited, as I cited earlier in the conversation with the first question that the councilman asked, that's invaluable, man. If people see suspicious people, call us. You know your neighborhood better than anybody else. I know in my neighborhood, if I'm taking out the trash and I see a car that doesn't belong on the block, I know it instantly. If you see people that seem strange to you in your own neighborhood, you know more than we do. Call us, let us know it's suspicious, let us know they're out of place, and give us the opportunity to go talk to them. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but get us involved early on and we'll let us try to help you out.
All right, Alan Sherman has a question, which we can start with Inspector Tavalaro, especially since he represents. His precinct is really the commercial heart of our area and of South Queens. Alan, you there?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, NYPD, for everything you do for us. Everyone is great. My question is about the retailers. Store owners are forced to open because they need the money. In Texas, they arrested a store owner for opening. What is New York's policy for store owners who do not follow what the New York State or New York City or the NYPD tell them to do?
I think that we lost. Did we lose Deputy Inspector Tavalaro?
No, I'm on.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
All right, good. You want to take a stab at that, and maybe, broaden it a little bit also, because you have so many stores, Jamaica Avenue, Sutphen Boulevard, that overlap my council district.
So, I'm not going to speak on the circumstances, what took place in Texas. I don't have all the facts. But as far as, what I can speak about in the Jamaica and the Jamaica Business District, I think over the course of this, I think we've written a handful of summonses. I think it was instances on restaurants where, the rule was they're allowed to be open, but they couldn't have the seating area. And there was, I think, 2 instances where the restaurants were serving people at the tables. I think they were warned. We warned them multiple times. Look, as far as enforcement goes, we were granted the ability to give discretion. So with that, first and foremost, it was educational. And we went in there not like, an iron fist. It was just to, look, maybe not all the store owners, were familiar with, what the executive order was. They hadn't posted it online, they hadn't seen it. So we went out initially, really just like similar to this weekend, just kind of on an educational front. And look, and then you're forewarned, and if we have to return again, then we have the option of summonsing or making an arrest. Fortunately for us here in the 103rd, we haven't. I know there was an arrest early on in the 106th for a bar that was operating under normal circumstances in the 106th precinct, where the bar owner actually had to be arrested because he refused to close the bar. But look, thankfully here, and look, I get the plight. I understand. People are in a hard place. We all have families. Like I'm fortunate enough to still be at work, but a lot of people are not. So I understand.
Let's go to Sherry. She has a specific but an important issue for Inspector Henry, if I'm not mistaken. Sherry, you there?
How are you? Thank you, Councilman Landsman, and hi, Deputy Inspector Henry. Thank you, you and your officers for all you're doing, and just hope you all stay safe. Yeah, a lot of speeding on. I'm by the way, the Vice President of Utopia States Civic. So thank you. There's been a lot of speeding on Union Turnpike and illegal U-turns on Union Turnpike, and people running stop signs on 75th Avenue between Utopia and 199th Street. With all the people out walking and riding bicycles, it's giving me a lot of concern for the safety of everybody. Is there anything that you can do to curb this behavior?
Of course. In fact, we're already doing it. So Union Turnpike, through one of the, I think the only enforcement action that we're up in is speeding tickets. So we actually had a speed initiative last weekend where we specific thoroughfares that is apt to speeding, and we put enforcement out there. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know we are significantly up in the number of speeding summonses we've written. And, I don't need to do any analysis to see that. I'm out there driving and you just see, you're doing 70 on the Belt Parkway and people are buzzing past you. So, yeah, this is a concern that the police department has identified a few weeks ago, and we started putting our resources to increasing the number of speeding summonses and enforcement that we're doing. So specifically, Union Turnpike, I know we have a few locations that are specific. Do you got a specific intersection you're concerned with?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, right in front of the Hillcrest Jewish Center, they're doing the U-turns both ways, which is illegal. But specifically between Utopia and 188th Street, and also on 188th Street between Union and I would say 73rd Avenue, they're speeding. Yep. That's the area I'm always walking around, and I'm seeing a lot of speeding.
Right, I'll have specific enforcement done at that location. I'll put my traffic officers out there and see what we could get to get people to slow down. But generally speaking, in the entire precinct, we've been focusing on speed just because fewer cars, some people feel that they could drive faster and, you know, you get them doing 50 miles an hour on a residential street.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
dangerous.
I know there's a camera and the light goes off all the time, you know, near 180 something street,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's enough, you know,
Nope.
it's like Mad Max out there. It just like, it seems like they, you know, not a lot of traffic and, oh, I can go speeding all over the place. But also the running of stop signs, especially, like I said, crossing 75th Avenue, they don't, or even like at 179th, there's a stop sign. It's like, oh, they don't even stop. They just keep going. And it's very much a concern, you know, being around.
So I agree, and we'll take care of it. We'll put some people out there for you.
All right, thank you very much. And just take care and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry.
So one thing we certainly have a lot of in both the 103rd and the 107th, probably true in every precinct in the city, but I only care about those two. It's my district. We'll have a lot of churches, a lot of synagogues, a lot of mosques. It's a beautiful thing. One aspect of having a house of worship in your neighborhood is though you can't have parking there. So I think Ruth Rosen has a question about that, which we could start with Inspector Tavalaro, and then she also has a question about. Well, I'll let her ask them. Ruth, you're there?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and for your concern and for what you're doing and for helping the community. I wish you all the best and good health and safety. Now, the question I have is, I've been walking a little bit. I wear my mask. I wear my gloves. I've noticed a few people spitting on the sidewalk, and that does concern me because I don't know, you know, how far the coronavirus can fly, or if somebody's spitting and leaving the sputum on the sidewalk, how safe that is. And is there any way to send a message on television that people should be aware of that? I'm sure people are just like unaware when they do it. Maybe it's a habit, but it's certainly a health issue right now. And I think, you know, dogs are walking, people are walking, children are walking. So it seems a very unsafe habit. It's not a clean habit. So I was wondering if there could be a message.
Yeah,
And
understood, Ruth. I agree with you. It's never a good look, particularly if I've seen females do it out there. And but all seriousness, it is something that is summonsable. It's not something that we ideally like to write because we get a lot of blowback from the other end. You know, but it would be more along the lines of getting, you know, utilizing our social media pages, utilizing our email blast, just to get out the, you know, the do's and don'ts, and, you know, that the hazards of, you know, why we should be wearing the PPEs, it's just to get the education as far as it's concerned with the spreading of the virus, versus, you know, maybe enforcing, you know, those type of summonses. Not to say that it's never done, but it's I think it would be more along the lines, like you said, it could be almost like a subconscious response, and they do it. Maybe they work, they get, you know, dirt or what have you, debris in their lungs, and, you know, which is, look, it happens. But I think it goes along the lines of us continuing to get the education out there.
Thank you. And I have one other question. Now, since there's no school and there are really no congregations that are open, you know, for churches or synagogues or mosques, anything, there are usually no parking signs. Are we allowed to park now that none of these facilities are being used?
And let me expand on that just a little bit. So synagogues, mosques, churches where it says no parking and the congregations aren't there, schools that have been effectively closed where it says no parking during the school day, meters, alternate side, where can people park now as a result of the new coronavirus situation that previously they couldn't?
Well, I mean, again, I didn't do any research on it, but I'll just speak, off the top of my head. Schools, no parking during school days. It's not a school day if there's no school. So, you could park at that location. But what I could speak to a little bit more intelligently is our enforcement efforts. So we're not looking to enforce that. So typically, churches and synagogues and mosques, it's no standing anytime. That hasn't been suspended. Those rules haven't been suspended. So technically you can't park there. Am I looking to have my officers do a blitz and catch everybody parked in a church zone? Obviously not. It's not something that we're encouraging or even want to happen. But technically, I mean, yeah, they could still be issued summonses for parking at those locations.
Got it. Meters still in effect, guys?
Meters are still in effect, yes, sir.
Got it. And I know in Flushing Meadow, which we are reminded is not part of the 107th, is one of the street closure streets, which is like a roadway within the park. In the 103rd, Inspector Tavalara, were there any of the street closures or any of them in the 103rd?
You're speaking in regards to Safe Streets that's adjacent to the park?
The mayor had put out this week streets throughout the city where they were closing the streets so people could congregate.
You were asked last week to survey the commands and pick a location. I think that location was submitted, but I was not informed that they officially were going to move forward with that yet, where the street closure would take place. Once it is in place, it's going to be treated almost like a block party. And I'm not saying it's a party, but the street's going to be closed. And they weren't looking for, police presence at that location per se. But we'd obviously, pay it some attention. They wanted it to my understanding, it was a street closure. It was just, to be utilized on a nice day while respecting the social distancing guidelines and with, limited police interaction. So our location was submitted, but I have not been notified as of when or if it's actually supposed to be officially closed and when that's supposed to take place.
All right, so this is going to be the last question. You guys have been really good with your time. We had a hearing in the council last week on the issue of domestic violence. Very strange numbers citywide, where there have been a significant increase, despite what we're talking about, reduction in crime, and a significant increase in the number of calls, to DV calls, to 911, and yet not an increase, and actually a decrease for many time periods in the number of arrests. And so I was wondering what you guys have seen in your respective commands in terms of domestic violence. As you can imagine, you can see where there would be an increase. People are cooped up, frustrations are high, people are out of work, and it's particularly concerning because women are cooped up with their abusers. So how can they even safely seek assistance? Can you just tell us what you're seeing in the 103rd and the 107th, and how you're trying to handle those situations, which are, from what I understand, in all the years that I've ever had conversations with cops, are the most difficult calls that they have to go to?
Sure. So I'll speak on behalf of the 103. Just looking quickly at the 28th day, and I didn't do a full analysis on our domestic violence breakdown, but we are actually down in felony assaults per se, and that only incorporates a small percentage of those type of crimes. And I didn't analyze the actual 911 calls in regards, but it usually gives a pretty consistent picture. But with that being said, last week it actually drove our index crimes. We had 10 total felony assaults, I think, versus a 5 from 2019. So obviously, as 100%, it's a big increase. And it's part of the, the whole domestic violence program with the NYPD is really, it's driven through education and relentless follow-up. So a lot of that's been reduced because of the epidemic. Because, we haven't been able to go out there and consistently visit our victims, do offender visits. It's a lot of been done over the telephone, and which is restricted. It's always nice to have that face-to-face conversation. And with this going on and the potential spread of corona, we didn't want to put our officers in unnecessary situations where they're exposed, where they're potentially exposing individuals, going into maybe an elder's house. So, that element of the domestic violence program was, I don't want to say completely removed, but it was limited. But looking at the numbers, it doesn't necessarily reflect it per se, but like I said, with the exception of last week, but that really is, the driving force, I think, between education and us continuously visiting these victims, going to these households, day in and day out. I mean, the domestic violence unit, they spend half of their day on the radio, going to, people's residence, just checking in after the offense. And some of these individuals, we maintain that relationship where they're visited multiple times a week for the course of years, because of the vulnerability to that victim. So that portion of the program has definitely, I think, taken, it was hurt by this. So look, once we get to the okay, we're going to we'll ramp it right back up because, like you said, it's a difficult crime. It's a difficult crime to prevent, period, because obviously we don't live with the victims. And it's hard, for the officers, to see that and go through it.
Inspector Henry?
Yeah, basically, ditto. Vinny basically speaks for the police department. What he said, we're down in domestic violence crime. I'm actually pretty surprised by that, as you cited, Councilman. People being cooped up for longer periods of time, and people being without work and without income and stuff like that. I was really concerned that we were going to see this. So we keep track of our households where we have a high propensity for violence, where there's an abuser in the home, and we monitor that. We haven't seen the increase that I was fearing, thank God. What we have done is kept in contact with people that have a high propensity for violence and domestic history via phone, which is I'm not as comfortable with that as I would be if they were making face-to-face contact. But at the same time, my officers are out there and they're interacting with a lot of people. And the last thing I would do is open my door to somebody that I know has had contact with, 200 people in a day. So, the decision was made from the police department standpoint to kind of move away from in-person interviews and go over with the phone. But a lot of these domestic violence victims have relationships. I have 4 officers specifically assigned. All they deal with is domestic violence victims. They're specifically trained. They're very comfortable with trying to elicit the information that needs to be elicited in some of these crimes, which victims historically are very hesitant to put out there. And they know how to get the information out of them. So we have not seen the increase I was afraid of. We've actually seen a decrease, which I'm very surprised at. We're doing our best under the circumstances to keep in contact with the victims of domestic violence and the likely victims going forward. We're trying to reach out to them, via telephone. But, that's what we're doing. I would feel much more comfortable if I had a face-to-face contact. But under the circumstances, I'm comfortable with the phone contact. And we have not seen any cries for help outside of the normal 911 calls.
All right, let me remind everyone as we're wrapping up that our office is still functioning and available to assist you. You can email me at rlandsmet@council.nyc.gov. You can call us at 718-217-4969. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @RoryLandsman. You can Google us and find us on the City Council website, where we have a whole page dedicated to the COVID-19 crisis. Let me thank our two commanding officers, Inspector Tavalaro of the 103rd Precinct, Inspector Henry, the 107th Precinct. We really appreciate your taking the time to get on this call. I know how busy you guys are. We're very, very appreciative of everything you and your officers do for our neighborhoods and for our communities. Please thank them for us. And on behalf of everyone, we hope you and your people stay safe, and we'll see everybody in person, hopefully, on the other side of this thing.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Rory.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
guys. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.